Hey guys, in this What's Unique About This Unique video, I want to talk about Nimis ring, but there's already a lot of information on PoE wiki about this ring, and the creator of this ring, Jungron, made a video showcasing all the skill gems, or most of the skill gems, and there's a lot of information about most of the notable interactions, but I want to add more information about this, and I tested some of the non-skill gem skills like Uul's axe, and I found some interesting mechanics, but like if you want my opinion about the ring, projectiles return to you at the end of the flight. That's kind of the only interesting thing about this ring. And we have something similar, which is Vengeance Cascade Anointment, but this is only for attacks, and attack projectiles return to you from final target, so this anointment needs a target, while Nimis ring does not need a target. And the wiki also states that when the projectile hits a wall, including spells for this, or it reaches the end of the flight distance, it will return. So in most cases this ring may double your DPS, and there are a couple like very specific builds that will more than quadruple, or in some cases even almost 10 times the damage. But it's not how do I say this, it's not like you're gonna slap this ring on and you instantly gonna double, triple, quadruple your DPS. It needs a specific build, and you need to play well. You still need to position yourself properly. So I'm gonna talk about how exactly that works, and why it works, and why sometimes it doesn't work. I did not buy the ring. In my opinion, the ring is overpriced and overhyped, overrated. It is pretty cool, but if you're like me and want to test more niche ideas, it's very overpriced and not worth it unless you're going meta. Like for example, one of the more meta things is Kinetic Blast with cast on crit and fireball, or cast while channeling fireball as well. Fireball, ice spear, kinetic blast, and there are a couple other things that can kind of shotgun. So the ring was provided by Boko, one of my patrons, so I did not buy the ring. It's like over 30 divines. It's way too expensive for most of my meme build ideas. Let's start with Uul's axe. So Uul-Netol's Embrace axe triggers level 20 Bone Nova when you hit a bleeding enemy. Now this trigger can be, you just need to hit with anything, including spells, as long as the enemy is bleeding. Now the cool thing about this, when you trigger Bone Nova, when it returns, it re-triggers itself, which looks really cool because it just projectiles fly in and then fly outwards again, and just fly in and fly outwards. So you would want like long bleed duration. However, shotgunning rules still apply. They do not change. This shoots 9 projectiles total in a Nova. Nimis ring also makes it shoot in a random direction. So it shoots a bunch of projectiles in a single proc, which means when they return, only one of those projectiles can hit the same target. Now another thing is, those returning projectiles target you. At the moment when they start returning, we're gonna snapshot your location, so we're not gonna home onto you. If you're standing in one spot, we start returning, and then you run elsewhere, we're still gonna return on that spot where you were when we started returning. That means if enemy also moves, we're not gonna hit anything. We're just gonna fly to where you were when we started returning, and just not gonna have a target to hit. Initially, when Bone Nova procs, it does not hit the target that it procs from. So Bone Nova is actually absolutely useless against single target. But once you add Nimis ring, you can just wait for the projectiles to return and get an extra hit with the Bone Nova. It's one of those cases where it sounds cool, but 30 divines is not justifiable for what it would be able to do. So Uul's axe is pretty cool, but hard to justify the price. Cameria's Avarice is same principle. It just is harder to apply very long freeze, but it can reproc itself. It's hard to test, but I'm pretty sure that it can reproc itself. It's just that the target is not going to be frozen when the projectiles return to reproc themselves. But it works the same way as Uul-Netol's. It just shoots projectiles when the target is frozen, return, and yeah, that's pretty much it. We do not shotgun. Ngamahu's Flame, anything that has a ground targeting, actually, it's a bit confusing because ground targeted projectiles like Molten Strike do not return. But if they bounce with like Vaal Molten Strike or Rolling Magma, each time a projectile hits the ground, it changes direction, but we do not return. So Ngamahu's Flame works almost like Molten Strike and do not return. We just hit the ground and that's it. Now, Saqawal's twisters do return. They are essentially spark. You can even apply spark MTX. And you can actually kind of overload the screen with the amount of the projectiles, because, well, you essentially double the amount of projectiles in the end. It's probably not really worth it. Like, it's not very strong. Saqawal's twisters in general are not very strong, and you would probably want a ring with a reduced skill effect duration anyway to be able to proc them more often, so it's not really doing much. Hidden Blade also returns, but the weapon is like very low damage, so you're not really gonna get much damage out of it. But the Hidden Blade with like the Squire and the Nimis could be cool, but still you're probably gonna want to play like a Poison or, I don't know, Bleed maybe. Now, Voidfletcher Quiver returns, but it explodes only once from what I can tell, but it kind of looks weird. It kind of begins to shoot but then quickly change direction and then stop and then explode. It's hard to tell, but it is, I believe, only exploding once. So same goes for, I guess, Explosive Arrow. I'm not entirely sure about Explosive Arrow. It also knows that secondary projectiles cannot return, so this includes Tornado Shot, Frost Blades, Venom Gyre, Scorch Arrow. The pods that you create, the pods are created on the projectile return, not on the travel, on the initial travel, it seems. Now, Spectral Shield Throw, it does return, but not the secondary projectiles that shoot outward. And also another thing, the projectiles return to the proxy if used with traps or mines. So if it's triggered with traps, mines, totems, we're gonna return to where those traps, mines or totems were, and not towards you. Lightpoacher also, initially it looked like it did not work, but after a bit more testing, we just don't travel very far, it just kind of disappear quickly. But if it hits the wall, it's very clear that we do return, but it's like very barely noticeable difference. Things like Kinetic Blast, Creeping Frost, Vaal Burning Arrow, anything that can target the ground, and shotgun. Like normally when you think about, let's say, Frostbolt, when you think about Frostbolt spell, you just shoot multiple projectiles with one cast. Let's say if you use GMP, right, and only one of those projectiles can hit. When we all return, only one of them can hit, so you don't really get much damage. However, things like Kinetic Blast, when you shoot multiple projectiles, all of them can explode nearby enemy and overlap, so the explosion part can overlap. The projectile itself still can only hit the same target once per attack essentially. However, anything that does like explode will overlap. So Creeping Frost looks weird, and initially I thought that it doesn't return and create it twice, but it does. It kind of shoots outwards, creates at the end of the travel distance, creates those well, explosions and leaves the chilling ground, and then returns to you, and then all of them like shotgun in the same spot. Well, yeah, shotgun and overlap with the explosions. And if you are standing next to a target, that overlap can become pretty strong. But then again, remember that Nimis also has all projectiles shoot in a random direction, which can make some of the skills feel really weird and inconsistent. I actually have a build idea which I planned with the Vaal Burning Arrow. How does 14 million damage in a single click sounds like? Pretty cool, right? But even then, 14 million in a single click, and you can click 3 times, doesn't sound that great when you consider how expensive a single item is. Although I'm pretty sure with Vaal Burning Arrow, people can make a build like that literally one-shot Guardians. I'm not sure about like Uber bosses, because we have like 70% less damage taken, so that's not really gonna work. But Vaal Burning Arrow, unlike normal Burning Arrow, it actually explodes on the location where you target, so it is a ground targeted skill. However, it also returns for some reason. But then again, you can kind of do the similar thing and have pierce. Each time Vaal Burning Arrow pierces, it also explodes. So you can kind of pierce the initial target, explode, and then explode behind it with the shotgunning mechanics and get more hits that way. I'm actually not sure how Vaal Burning Arrow works with the Vengeance Cascade. Technically it does not need a target, so I'm not entirely sure, but Vaal Burning Arrow can dish out a lot of damage. I can actually show you the build that I had planned. It was with the Inquisitor, so you ignore enemy elemental resistances completely. It's not finished planning, it's just kind of a rough idea. I wanted to see the damage scaling, and I'm not entirely sure how I would... this was scaling all the all 3 attributes sort of, just to get more crit chance. You want to reach 100% crit chance so that you are always consistent, because if you don't crit, you don't ignore resistances and your damage is bad. So this is 1 million average hit damage Vaal Burning Arrow per projectile, and you would release 7 projectiles. So 7 projectiles, that's already 7 million, and then you would do 14 million damage because projectiles will also return. I'm gonna include this PUB in video description if someone wants to take a look at that, but like again, it's hard to justify Fated Divine's ring for a build like this, which doesn't really have good defenses, doesn't have good speed. It's kind of all sorts of pretty much full uniques. So yeah, so the main meta things that I had people play are Kinetic Blast with cast on crit, and I tried it myself, Kinetic Blast with cast on crit, and Fireball. Now the Fireball I think is a bit misleading. Well, not really misleading, it does give a lot of DPS if the target is standing right next to you, or you essentially have to stand close enough to target for the returning projectiles that hit the ground and explode to reach the enemy. So the enemy is gonna have to be right next to you, or you have to get insane AoE for Fireball, which you can get pretty big AoE for Fireball. So in theory, even if you're shooting like 10 fireballs, well, probably not 10, let's say 8 fireballs, all of them start returning, only 1 projectile can hit with the initial hit the target, but all of those projectiles can shotgun by exploding next to an enemy. However, like I said, if you move and the boss moves with you by chasing you, it may not be able to reach that target, and it's not really gonna be very consistent DPS. So when you see those clips, people doing Fireball and doing big damage, know that you also need to be positioned properly. You don't just get like a free damage out of nowhere. Besides, you're gonna be using like GMP or using like a Sire of Shard, which itself doesn't give much damage, it just gives you an extra 4 projectiles. And remember, extra 4 projectiles means extra 4 hits if you position yourself properly. Another skill that people like to use is Ice Spear. Anything that can work like a barrage that shoots in a straight line may work great. However, remember that projectiles shoot in a random direction. Returning projectiles will most likely still all hit the same target with the Ice Spear, but you're not necessarily going to double your DPS. Like if I were to cast Ice Spear, it shoots in random directions, but all of them return towards you. So you don't technically even double your DPS sometimes, because not all the projectiles going to hit the initial target. What I seen was people using Cyclone with cast while sharding and Ice Spear, and that does seem to work a bit better because you are always on top of the enemy and it's easier to stay positioned properly. I'm not sure if I did a good job at explaining my opinion why I think Nimis is overrated and why it doesn't even sometimes double your DPS, because you still need to position properly. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about Nimis? Let me know in the comments below what kind of other build ideas you have for this Nimis ring. I will give back Nimis ring, so I will probably not be doing a build unless I get some really cool idea. And right now I'm doing another build which does require quite a lot of currency, which is actually Relic of the Pact Impale Champion. So after that build I will see maybe if I have enough currency, maybe I'll buy a Nimis ring and try some meme ideas, but it has to be something meme and not meta. Although meta, as I tried Kinetic Blast with the cast and crit Fireball, it did feel really good. Although even without Fireball it felt great because of the like overlapping explosions, and it just looks really cool. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about this Nimis ring and if you got some interesting build ideas with it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.